Hello, you're on the Ruslan Belov channel. Today we'll discuss the situation in Ukraine as of April 15th, 2025. A tremendous number of events have taken place today, so let's get started. First, let's move to the front line, and we'll begin with the Sumy sector. Today, some very interesting statistics were published by Russian sources. According to this chart, the Russian side managed to count the number of foreigners found in Kursk Oblast. Naturally, we can imagine in what condition they were found. According to Russian figures, the largest number of what the West calls volunteers came from Poland and were found in Kursk Oblast. Georgian volunteers take second place, so to speak. Third, fourth, and fifth places are shared by Romania, France, and Germany. So we can see that a significant number, in fact the lion's share, of the entire AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, grouping that participated in combat operations in Kursk Oblast were foreign fighters. Now, let's move on to specific events. What happened over the past 24 hours? A large number of pro-Russian sources began reporting early in the morning that the Russian Federation had launched a broad offensive, advancing towards settlements such as Vladimirovka, Vodolaki, and Belovody. That is, fighting is currently ongoing for 3 villages. I'll repeat, this information was published by pro-Russian sources by the end of April 15, 2025. So far, there is no objective footage confirming these advances in favor of the Russian Federation, but we'll keep this information in mind. Additional details may emerge in the coming days. However, there is objective footage of strikes on temporary deployment points. Drone strikes, FAB-guided aerial bomb strikes, artillery strikes on rear positions, and positions near the settlement of Yunakovka, as well as along the potential axis of advance. Next, we move to the settlement of Oleshnya, where the situation has stalled. A few days ago, there were reports that the Russian armed forces controlled at least 50% of Oleshnya. This information was published by reliable pro-Russian sources on April 11th. But now it's April 15th, and there have been no further updates. No confirmation whether Russian units have managed to push out Ukrainian formations or if Ukrainian forces still maintain firm control over this settlement. At the same time, a lot of news is coming from the monastery. Let me remind you that currently, the most intense and dramatic events are unfolding around the Gornal Street. Nicholas White Mountain Monastery. According to pro-Russian sources, around 300 Ukrainian soldiers from various AFU units, such as the 95th, 82nd, 80th Brigades, as well as the 129th Territorial Defense Brigade, were blockaded inside the monastery. There were reports that after Ukrainian units were trapped in the monastery, negotiations began but were abruptly cut short when, according to pro-Russian sources, the Ukrainian commander in charge of negotiations was killed by soldiers from adjacent units who decided to fight to the end. Following the breakdown of talks, the Russian side made a difficult decision: to storm the church and monastery itself. This was undoubtedly a tough choice for Russia, given the monastery's religious significance. But given the AFU's stance, heavy fighting is expected here. Today, objective footage has been published showing the Russian armed forces launching multiple strikes using MLRS, multiple launch rocket systems, and Iskander-M missile systems on AFU positions inside the monastery and its surroundings. In these clips, we can see strikes near the monastery, possibly targeting crossings or temporary deployment points. Notably, Iskander missiles are being used, suggesting that the monastery is not just a religious site. There are likely extensive catacombs where Ukrainian forces are concentrated. It seems that nothing short of Iskanders can break this defense. We'll continue monitoring the situation, but I'll repeat, the fighting here will likely be extremely brutal. Next, we move to the Belgorod direction. Today, after a long pause, the AFU attempted to cross the state border again, advancing toward Popovka and Demidovka. However, this time, according to various pro-Russian sources, the offensive was halted near the village of Prokhody, meaning Ukrainian units didn't even reach the border. In previous attempts, they managed to cross the border, mass forces around Demidovka, and even partially take control of it. But today, the first attack failed before even reaching Russian territory. Objective footage shows FPV drone strikes on Ukrainian vehicles trying to maneuver through a forest toward the border for a push into Demidovka. There's also interesting activity west of Kucherov. Notice this large forested area. According to objective footage, the AFU is currently attempting to concentrate forces there, possibly for infiltration into Russian territory. Over the past 24 hours, this forest has been heavily struck, likely targeting AFU positions or sabotage reconnaissance groups operating in the area. We can see that the situation is stable. Now, let's move to the Kupiansk sector of the front. There's a lot of geolocated footage and interesting news here. If we look at the northern sector, the maps remain unchanged. The offensive has stalled near western Dvureknoye, that is, on the Ukrainian side of the Oskol River. The advance has also halted near the settlement of Kamenka. It's hard to say exactly why this slowdown has occurred. Perhaps arriving reinforcements have stabilized the situation, or maybe the Russian army has taken a brief operational pause to replenish resources, regroup, improve logistics, and possibly prepare for a renewed offensive. It's difficult to say for now, but overall, the Russian army has already accomplished its primary objective in this sector. The main goal was to secure the entire Ukrainian-held bank of the Oskol River, from Kupiansk to the state border. Currently, this multi-kilometer stretch is fully under Russian control. The depth of the foothold is still limited, though in some areas it extends deeper. Right now, the Russian army is concentrating its main efforts on the southern Kupiansk direction, or the Lyman sector, where today brought news that Russian forces have significantly expanded their zone of control near villages like Zelenaya Dolina, Green Valley, Lipovo, Novaya, Katerinovka, and Novomikhailovka. Literally every day, we hear reports of another small advance, another patch of land coming under Russian control. So far, there's no geolocated footage confirming this, but it's likely something will be published soon. Let me remind you that the latest updates from this sector, as of April 14th, reported that Russian troops had reached the eastern outskirts of Novomikhailovka. Today, however, there are claims that not only have Russian units entered Novomikhailovka, but they've also advanced close to Zelenaya Dolina. According to some neutral war mappers, the distance between Russian forward positions and Zelenaya Dolina is now less than 1 kilometer. This information was provided today by independent analysts. Further north, reports suggest that Russian forces have taken the northernmost strongpoint just above the village of Novaya. This fortified network of trenches and dugouts is now under Russian control, effectively completing the northern encirclement of this small cluster of villages. There's also confirmed movement toward Novomikhailovka, though, again, no objective footage yet. At the same time, more and more reports indicate increased Russian activity along the Novo-Vodyanoye, Makeyevka, Grekovka line. A few days ago, there was a minor frontline adjustment here, initially reported by pro-Russian sources, while pro-Ukrainian channels on April 13th published footage suggesting possible assault operations by Russian troops. Today, however, the focus is on expanding control zones, primarily reported by pro-Russian outlets, alongside intensified FPV drone strikes in the Novo-Vodyanoye, Grekovka area. Overall, it's clear that Ukraine's defenses here are wavering, and Russian-controlled territory keeps expanding steadily. A bit further south, on the classic Lyman axis, fighting continues near Torske and Zareknoye. Today, objective footage was published showing LMU missile strikes on Ukrainian FPV drone operator positions in Zareknaya. Seversk sector moving to the Seversk sector, fighting has been ongoing for days near the approaches to Grigorovka. Today, new objective footage was published west of Belogorovka. The dynamics here are significant. Here's how the map looked by the end of April 13th. By April 14th, based on Ukrainian published footage, we adjusted the front line between Grigorovka and Verkhnekamenskoye. And now, by April 15th, there's another adjustment between Grigorovka and Belogorovka. We can see that the Russian army is advancing on a broad front, having broken through the main Ukrainian defensive line known as Rasheska, the Comb. Russian units are gradually pushing toward this small village, though in truth, little remains of it, as it was completely razed back in 2022. Chasiv Yar, Toretsk sector. Now let's turn to the Chasiv Yar, Toretsk sector. If we're talking about Chasiv Yar, the battle here is breaking records, not in intensity, but in duration. If I recall correctly, The assault on Chasiv Yar is now the longest-lasting battle of the entire special military operation. Previously, the Battle of Bakhmut held that title, lasting around 8 months. The fight for Chasiv Yar, however, is approaching, if it hasn't already reached, a full year. The battle isn't just for the part of the town on the Ukrainian side of the Seversky Donets-Donbass Canal. It also includes the Novy, new micro-district, which saw prolonged fighting, as you may remember. And now, a year later, despite some momentary gains, we can see that much remains to be done before Chasiv Yar falls. Russian forces have yet to take the Shevchenko district, factory number 2, or fully clear the central citadel, where Ukrainian troops still hold positions. Toretsk direction. Despite this, there has been progress near Toretsk. Today we received multiple geolocated updates from the Toretsk-Konstantinovka axis. Let's start with the settlement of Nelipovka. Today, objective footage was published showing destroyed Russian equipment, likely hit by a drone. We then see a Ukrainian FPV drone continuing its flight, scanning the area until its operator spots movement. A Russian soldier. The drone immediately locks onto him. These clips are from the same breakthrough attempt we discussed a few days ago, but now with additional footage. Despite losses in equipment, it appears that Russian infantry managed to dismount and secure defensive positions here. So for now, we'll keep the map as it is. There's no further substantial information from this sector of the front. However, I'd like to remind you that yesterday, we began noting unusual Ukrainian activity in the northern part of Sherbinivka. Back then, we speculated that Ukrainian forces were massing troops in this area, possibly preparing for a counterattack toward the northwestern part of Toretsk in an attempt to break through to their encircled units trapped in the mine. And today, the first reports on this topic have emerged. Several neutral war mappers confirm that over the past 48 hours, Ukraine has indeed launched counterattacks. Some independent analysts even claim that Ukrainian forces have retaken part of Toretsk. It's still too early to say whether they've succeeded in breaking the encirclement of their troops in the mine, but regardless, the situation has become more complicated for Russian forces. That said, this was expected. Strategic importance of the mine. This mine is a critical defensive stronghold. Losing it could lead to a complete collapse of the front line in Sherbinivka, Novospassky, Katerinivka, Klebanbyk, and Ivanopilia, essentially the entire perimeter. That's why Ukraine will fight desperately to hold it. Ukrainian forces stretched thin. Despite their efforts, we can see that Ukrainian forces are somewhat unfocused. Right now, they're trying everything to stabilize the situation along the T-0516 highway, while the Russian army continues pushing forward along the H-0519 road toward Delivka. Today, fresh footage was published showing artillery strikes on Ukrainian positions. The first videos confirming the capture of Ukrainian soldiers on the Ukrainian-held side of the Seversky Donets-Donbass Canal, South Konstantinivka, Klebanbyk direction. This sector has been one of the most dynamic lately, rivaling even the Lyman front. Every day we see adjustments to the front line here. The Russian army is steadily improving its positions, advancing north along the H-20 highway. Let's recap. April 8th, the second wave of the offensive began. The first wave cleared Oleksandropil and Pantelemonivka. April 9th, reports of rapid Russian advances suggesting a collapse of Ukrainian defenses. Current situation, Russian forces are now reportedly on the northern outskirts of Valentinivka, with only pockets of resistance remaining. There's also information that Russian troops have entered Sukha-Balka from the southeast and south, bypassing a heavily fortified Ukrainian strongpoint rather than assaulting it head-on. If confirmed, this could mean Sukha-Balka and Valentinivka falling under Russian control soon. A total collapse of Ukrainian defenses on the Klebanbyk axis, the entire bulge from Tarasivka to Sherbinivka being flattened. So far, there are no signs that Ukraine is stabilizing the situation here. Eastern flank of the Pokrovsk agglomeration fighting is intensifying toward Malinivka. Recent days saw fierce battles for Yelizavetivka, with Russia committing significant manpower and equipment to break through. By April 15th to 16th, reports indicate a Ukrainian strongpoint cleared Russian forces advancing north toward Malinivka's western and southwestern outskirts. Malinivka itself is under massive bombardment, FABs, artillery, everything to prevent Ukrainian counterattacks. Meanwhile, Russian troops are clearing tree lines, and Ukrainian attempts to retake Yelizavetivka have been thwarted by Russian FPV drones, which have destroyed evacuation vehicles, engineering equipment, and armor. Southern Pokrovsk direction, preparing for an assault. Extremely interesting footage is emerging from the southern outskirts of Pokrovsk. Massive artillery strikes are hitting the area, possibly preparing for an assault. A Russian drone filmed Grad MLRS and artillery blanketing the entire sector. Thermobaric Sontsepyok strikes targeted areas near the railway. FPV drones are hitting temporary Ukrainian deployments and defensive lines. If we look at updates since April 1st, there's been heavy activity south of Pokrovsk. Novopavlivka is being leveled. The southern citadel of Pokrovsk is under relentless FAB strikes. Russian troops are clearing the railway area with thermobaric weapons. Ukrainian positions in Suky Yar are being systematically hunted by drones. Conclusion: the situation remains highly fluid, with Russian forces applying pressure across multiple axes. Ukraine is struggling to stabilize the front, particularly around Toretsk and Pokrovsk, while Russian advances near Kleban-Beek threaten a major breakthrough. We'll continue monitoring for official confirmations or new geolocated footage, but for now, the momentum appears to favor Russia in these sectors. All this news, combined with the intense Russian operations, suggests that an offensive may soon begin to seize the southern outskirts of Pokrovsk. If successful, this would create a major media precedent for the entire Pokrovsk sector. One thing is certain: if Russian forces manage to gain a foothold on the outskirts of Mirnograd and Pokrovsk, it will cause panic, not just among Ukrainian troops, but also in Ukrainian media. This would be a massive psychological and informational blow. South Donetsk direction, key updates. Ukrainian counterattack. Near Dnipro-Enahaya, Ukrainian sources claim their forces retook the settlement of Dnipro-Enahaya in a counterattack. We're not adjusting the map yet, waiting for confirmation, possibly from deep state or other sources. However, there's a high probability that Russian troops lost positions near Dnipro-Enahaya and were forced to fall back toward Veseloye and Novo-Ocheretovate. Continued fighting near Otradne and Bogatyr. Reports from both pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian sources confirm ongoing clashes. The situation is fluid: Ukrainian counterattacks versus gradual Russian advances. Shevchenkove, a critical flashpoint. For 2 days straight, the Ukrainian mapping service Deep State has raised alarms about this sector. The 31st Mechanized Brigade, responsible for defending this area, and Deep State both indicate a difficult situation. Geolocated footage confirms Russian troops have entered Shevchenkove. Recent developments. Over the past few days, we noted Russian forces massing near Shevchenkove along tree lines. Today the assault began, with dozens of armored vehicles moving in, visible in footage. Some units managed to enter the settlement, others were abandoned or destroyed in the fields. It's unclear whether Russian forces will hold their gains. The situation may shift overnight, April 15th to 16th. Final thoughts. We'll continue monitoring for updates from both Ukrainian and Russian sources. For now, this is the situation as it stands. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more updates. Until next time.